We speak of death as if it is an end, a period, a silence after the sentence, but in truth, what we call death may only be a transition, not a disappearance, but a transformation. Carl Jung, in his exploration of the psyche and the archetypal world, suggested that the soul is not tethered to the physical body in the way we imagine. It stretches across time, myth, memory, and the unconscious. And when the body ceases, the soul does not vanish. It begins a return. The first year after death is not chaos. It is not darkness. It is not instant enlightenment. It is something slower, more personal. The psyche, no longer bound by flesh, begins to unwind from all the forms it once believed itself to be. It does not rise upward in a flash of light. It descends inward, into itself, into the layers of unlived life, into the shadows it never faced. You see, the soul is not merely what survives death. It is what death unveils. In the earliest moments after passing, if such things can be measured in time, there is a strange stillness. The conscious self, once so preoccupied with identity, begins to loosen. The roles we played, the names we answered to, the unfinished ambitions, the grudges and glories, all of it falls away like a costume after the play ends. There is no applause, only silence. And in that silence, something watches. This watcher is not the ego. It is not the inner critic. It is the self, capital S, the deep, eternal presence that has always been with us, whether we heard it or not. In life, it whispered. In death, it waits. The first phase of the soul's journey is remembrance, not of events, but of essence. The soul begins to shed everything that was borrowed, beliefs inherited, fears conditioned, illusions performed. It reviews, not as a judge, but as a witness, with clarity, not condemnation. And in this remembering there is a subtle pain, not regret, but recognition. This is what I could have become. These are the parts I silenced. These are the truths I was afraid to live. Carl Jung believed that dreams, symbols, and archetypes are the language of the soul. And in this posthumous state, when the rational mind dissolves, the symbolic begins to dominate. The soul does not see in images, but in meaning. It moves through inner landscapes, not heaven or hell, but mirrors. It walks through gardens where past lovers linger as fragrances. It sits in abandoned houses, built from childhood traumas. It finds doors it never opened, and behind each, a part of itself. The first year after death is not linear. There are no clocks in the unconscious. There is only depth. And the deeper the life, the deeper the descent. Those who lived superficially may pass quickly through the veil, but those who carried great inner worlds, who wrestled with questions of meaning, who touched the shadow and dared to love, they go deeper, not as a punishment, but as a return to the vastness they once only glimpsed. Time, as we know it, fractures. Some souls linger near the world they left, not to haunt, but to observe. They watch the ones who grieve them. They feel the weight of unspoken words, but they do not suffer. The suffering belonged to the body, to the ego. The soul simply feels what is unfiltered. It recognizes the invisible threads still tying it to others, and if the soul had lived with love, those threads glow. There are also souls who resist, who fear the unraveling, who still cling to their former identities, their possessions, their grudges. For them, the first year is turbulent, not because they are judged, there is no external God striking them down, but because they cannot let go. Jung wrote that what we resist persists, and in this post-death liminality, resistance becomes a trap. These souls spiral in echo chambers of self-denial, not in torment, but in stagnation. They wait for a door to open, not realizing it was never locked. But even here, the self remains, waiting, watching, never abandoning. The journey of the soul after death is deeply individual. No two are alike, because no two lived the same illusions or carried the same wounds. Some pass through their inner underworld with curiosity, others with fear, some with awe, and some with a quiet joy. For they recognize this space. They've been here before. In dreams, in moments of ego death, in silence, in surrender. These are the ones who lived consciously, who met death before dying. There is no punishment, only process. And in that first cycle, what we call a year, though it may be a moment or an eternity, the soul reclaims its wholeness, slowly, painfully, beautifully. Every face it wore, every mask it hid behind, every projection, every denial, every forgotten part, all of it returns, not to haunt, but to be held, to be seen, to be forgiven. This is not the end. This is the reintegration. For Jung, the journey of individuation did not end with death. It continued, perhaps even began in earnest. Death was not a closing chapter, but a deeper dive into the mystery of self, into the collective unconscious, into the ocean from which all souls arise and return. And so the first year after death is not a departure from life, but a remembering of life's meaning, of what was true beneath all the noise, of what was sacred even when we ignored it. The soul does not seek reward, it seeks reunion with itself, with the source, with the unnameable presence we only glimpsed in moments of love, surrender, and silence. This is the beginning of that return. To the soul, time is not a sequence, it is a depth. And in the vast, dreamlike space that unfolds after death, the soul continues to descend, not into punishment, nor into bliss, but into itself, into the archetypal layers of memory and meaning. Carl Jung often spoke of the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious, one built from individual experience, the other from the primordial forces that shape all human life. After death, these two realms blend. What once seemed separate begins to merge. In the second phase of the soul's journey, something changes. The self, now stripped of identity and personal narrative, begins to sense its place within a larger pattern, a great web, a mythic framework. It no longer clings to the events of its last life, the name, the face, the story. These have already fallen away. What emerges now are archetypes. Not as concepts, but as living realities. The soul meets the lover, the child, the warrior, the orphan, the magician, the shadow. Not as symbols, but as presences within itself. These are not external beings. They are inner truths, long forgotten. The meeting with these archetypes is not always gentle. Some appear in forms the soul does not recognize, distorted, fragmented, wounded. These are the parts of the psyche that were denied, suppressed, or projected during life. And yet, they come now, not to accuse, but to be integrated, to be acknowledged. The soul begins to reclaim its full image, not the persona it wore, but the totality of its being. Individuation, in the Jungian sense, continues even after death. Perhaps this is when it accelerates. There are no more distractions, no more roles to play. Only truth. In this stage, the soul often experiences something like an emotional purging, not as torment, but as catharsis. It relives the love it never expressed, the forgiveness it never gave, the joy it never allowed. These are not punishments. They are liberations. To feel fully, for the first time, what it truly meant to be alive, not as a memory, but as energy, as vibration, as essence. The soul tastes what it missed and what it protected itself from, and in that fullness, something releases. Many traditions speak of a life review, but it is not like watching a movie. It is more like becoming the entire web of cause and effect. The soul becomes the people it loved and the ones it hurt. It feels the echo of its own words in others' hearts. It sees how every action rippled outward. There is no judgment in this, only awareness, a breathtaking clarity that allows the soul to say without fear, yes, this is who I was, and this is what I created. And then the letting go begins, not of memory, but of ownership. The soul slowly stops clinging to my life, my pain, my story. It releases the illusion that it was ever alone. The boundary between self and other begins to blur, not in a way that erases individuality, but in a way that expands it. You are still you, but you are also more than you. You are the mother and the child, the betrayed and the betrayer, the silence and the scream. You are not one thread in the web. You are the web. In this state, many souls find a strange peace, not ecstasy, not happiness, but peace, the kind that comes from no longer needing to pretend, perform, or defend. The soul becomes soft again, receptive, open, not to the noise of the world, but to the presence beneath it. Jung called this the self, the divine image in the human psyche. After death, this self is not an idea. It becomes the center of gravity. Everything circles around it. Everything dissolves into it. But even now, not all souls are ready. Some resist this opening. They still carry attachments to people, to places, to unresolved desires. These souls linger, not in torment, but in liminality. They revisit the living, not to interfere, but to hold on. They whisper in dreams. They walk through familiar spaces. They wait for a chance to complete what they left undone, for permission to move on. Often, it is the grief of the living that holds them back. When love becomes a chain instead of a bridge, the soul hesitates. This is why, across cultures, we find rituals for the dead, prayers, candles, offerings, not to appease angry spirits, but to release them, to bless their journey, to say, you may go now, we carry your love, you are free. And yet, not all souls go alone. There are moments in this journey where guides appear, not angels in the religious sense, but presences of wisdom, archetypal figures, ancestors, inner teachers. The soul recognizes them not by face, but by feeling. A deep familiarity, a timeless trust. These guides do not lecture. They mirror. They remind. They accompany. Sometimes they take the form of people the soul knew. Sometimes they are strangers. Sometimes they are simply light. Jung wrote that the psyche contains within it a guiding principle, something that wants wholeness, wants integration. After death, this principle becomes visible. It is no longer subtle intuition. It is a beacon, and it calls the soul forward, not upward, not away, but inward, deeper still, into the mystery, into what lies beyond even memory, even identity, even archetype. There is one more layer, one more threshold, but the soul does not cross it lightly. It waits, not for permission, but for readiness, for full surrender, for the moment when it can say, without hesitation, I am complete, I am not lost, I am not lacking, I am ready to become what I was before I became. And as the second phase draws to a close, the soul stands at that final veil, not as who it was, but as who it truly is, no longer reaching backward, no longer seeking to hold, but prepared to dissolve, not into nothing, but into everything. By the time the soul reaches the threshold of its final passage in the first year after death, something remarkable has already occurred. The noise has faded. The questions that once plagued the conscious mind, was I good enough? Did I matter? Will I be remembered? Have dissolved not because they were answered, but because they were no longer relevant. The soul is no longer concerned with the ego's need for permanence. It has remembered something older than identity, its original shape. This is the stage Jung might have called the return to the archetypal source, the reabsorption of the individual current into the vast sea of the collective, not as erasure, but as expansion. Imagine the drop of water that finally recognizes it was never separate from the ocean. This is not the death of selfhood. It is the realization that the self was always more than a single lifetime could contain. But even now, the soul hesitates, not from fear, not from grief, but from awe. There is something sacred in the threshold, in the in-between, in this place beyond story, beyond symbol, beyond form, where the soul stands not as the seeker, not as the wounded, not even as the healed, but as the observer of all it has ever been. It sees the long road, the mistakes, the joys, the betrayals, the awakenings. It sees the echo of every life it has touched, and it realizes something that no belief system can prepare it for. It was never alone, not once. The pain, the isolation, the sense of separation, they were part of the dream, part of the necessary illusion that allows consciousness to grow. But here, at the final edge, the soul no longer needs to believe in division. It remembers the unity beneath all experience, the place where all things begin and return, the self, the source, the light that never left. Some would call this God. Others might call it the field, the one, the infinite. Jung would not have insisted on a name. He believed that what lies beyond the psyche cannot be spoken, only symbolized. In this place, words fail. There are no doctrines, only presence, only awareness, only being. The final passage is not a choice, it is a release, a quiet unfolding, like a flower opening in slow motion. There is no tunnel, no gate, no judgment. There is only surrender. The soul becomes light, not in the visual sense, but in weight, in essence. It is no longer carrying the weight of separateness, of form, of fear. It becomes what it always was beneath the masks, consciousness without boundary. And yet, in this expansion, nothing is lost. The soul does not forget. It remembers with more clarity than ever before. Not the events, but the meaning. The soul carries the taste of every love it gave, every act of courage, every time it told the truth when it was easier to lie. It carries these not as trophies, but as harmonies, as notes in the great symphony of being. These become its vibration. What remains after death is not personality, it is frequency, the soul's unique imprint. And this imprint is not judged, not ranked. It simply is. It resonates through the fabric of reality. It becomes part of the subtle architecture of the world, a quiet influence, a presence felt in dreams, in instincts, in synchronicities. Some souls, after this passage, return. Not in a reincarnational sense, though many traditions speak of that, but as impressions, as guides, as whispers, as the chill down your spine when you make a hard but right decision, as the warmth you feel when you're about to give up but choose to try again. The soul, once integrated, no longer needs a body to love. It becomes love itself. But not all souls cross at the same pace. Some remain near the veil, not because they are punished, but because something in them still needs time. Time to understand, time to soften, time to let go. And time in the after realm is not measured in hours, it is measured in readiness. Readiness to stop clinging to the known and step into the mystery. That readiness may take moments or lifetimes. Jung warned us that the psyche is layered and that our resistance to wholeness is often unconscious. It is no different after death. The shadows we denied in life may still linger. But here, there is no condemnation, only the invitation to integrate, again and again, until even the darkest fragments return to the light. Perhaps this is why some souls feel near us long after they're gone, not trapped, but finishing the work, watching, whispering, guiding us, not toward them, but toward ourselves. Because in the end, that is what the soul seeks. Not escape, not reward, but return. Return to its own truth, return to the self. And through that return, it becomes what Jung always believed we were capable of becoming: whole, luminous, real. This is what happens in the first year after death. Not a journey through clouds or flames, but a deep, slow homecoming, a descent into what we've always been. The body was never the end. It was the threshold, and beyond that threshold lies not nothingness, but everything. Everything you loved, everything you feared, everything you could have been, and still are. The soul does not die. It remembers, and in that remembering, it becomes free.